And we only looked at the power station and the manufacture of the structural lightweight aggregate going together. So we were actually privy to some of pretty confidential commercial information, which is being negotiated as we speak. So if we assume in more general terms, 140 million investment over 18 years, that would result overall in a payback period of 8 years and an average annual return on investment of about 14%. Now that is the project overall. Now that needs to be negotiated between the power station and the manufacturer. Now power stations have a much longer financial horizon. A lightweight manufacturer wants to see A, a higher return, and B, a faster return. So there needs to be some negotiation between the two. But what we have seen can well and truly deal with the industry average. So capital replacement cost for a power station is roughly 8%. At the moment, the figures we have seen, they would get a return on investment of 10% over 10 years, which is well and truly within the horizon of a power station. So without giving away too much confidential information, let's look at Lake Macquarie on the next slide. Sorry, there is one I knew. Joe, don't ever print for me speaker notes on both sides. I keep turning them around the wrong way. So, slide 12, okay. So when we looked at this particular example we had on the previous slide, okay, we modeled with input-output analysis with REMPlan, which has economists in the audience may say, yeah, well, there are some reservations with input-output analysis. I'm the first one. I've supervised a number of PhDs in that field. Yes, I know of all the reservations, but that's what's being used by local government at the moment. So let's use what's being used. If we do that, just the manufacturer of lightweight aggregate, in the example we had before, there would be 232 ongoing full-time equivalent jobs. Now, 232 jobs you don't just stamp out of the ground. That is a sizable number. There would be more than 2 billion output generated and about 340 million in wages and salaries created and up to 700 million of value added generated. Most importantly to this audience, over the 18 years, 11.5 million tons would be used. That is talking about a factory which has an annual capacity of 1 million tons.
Can I just have a little bit of quiet?
That's one factory for one ash dam.
Just for 1 second, I just have a little announcement.
Big ash dams to deal with, and 1 million ton a year for each of them. Let's assume we have one factory at each of them. That's 5 million tons. At the moment, we are evaluating how much of this product can the market take, and it looks like the market can take at least that much. Again, we are still calculating this, but there is a whole lot of ash. So we're looking at a 4 decades industry at least. Now, now it is the next slide. Yes, number 13. Yeah. We looked at the figures for Lake Macquarie. So it's the same example, 140 million investment over 18 years.
So we're looking
that would create 550 jobs in the Hunter region.
Now,
okay, so these models, they go by local government area, by region, by state, and nationally.
So it's
550 jobs in the Hunter region if we build one of those factories, say in Eraring, for example. 462 of those jobs would be in Lake Macquarie. I'm sure Greg is paying very close attention listen to this.
And nationally. So
Let me tell you, in the long-term ash management plan of Eraring Power Station, they have a grand promise of developing a trial facility that can develop into a factory that may process a quarter of a million a year. Sorry guys, not good enough. That's why we demand a load-based levy now. It's for the political pressure that comes from the community through our elected parliamentarians to get them to the table. Because let's face it, this is profit for them. We force them to make money. Well, how much better can it get? Yes, and I'm just checking this is the corrected version. Thank you, Naomi. At the last night, Naomi had to do overtime and change my slide because I had a typo in one of the numbers. But that's what we're talking about, okay? We're talking about forcing the power station to come to the table because what we're doing is we're talking with all the industry players along the whole supply chain of precast concrete products made with lightweight structural aggregates. Once everybody comes to the table, it seems the last ones are, guess who? Yes, you're right, the power stations. They are the ones. We're making them money, okay? They can use the resource that is in the ground. I can't be clearer. So on the last slide, I have listed some of the advantages of a load-based levy.
Hello,
Can technically use 100% of the fresh coal ash, and they're all going around and say, yes, we have promised to use 80% of the fly ash in Eraring. And I'm going, guys, I've read what you promised us in 1998. I've read what you promised us in 2000. And every second year since, you kept promising that the reuse rate of the freshly produced ash will go up. What have you delivered? Zilch. The ash rate goes up very, very slowly. And we're not talking just about the fresh ash. Not just about what they're producing now. Now is the time to come to the table to use the ash that's in the dams. We've heard plenty of how dangerous it is. What kind of it is, let's use it.
So with us, who's going to help facilitate that. So once you've finished your food, you can put your plates in one of the trays.
Yes, you're independent. You're not in one of the parties that are in government, but they take turns. That point has been made. At the end of the day, we as the local population want that stuff gone. And we vote. So we also want the 3,000 roughly, that's preliminary figures. It may be 3,500, it may be 2,800, it may be quite a bit more. I am in the process of writing a report which hopefully you will be able to find at the inquiry's website. If not, you can definitely find it at the Hunter Community Environment Center. Should be ready in about 2 or 3 weeks. But it is an industry for at least 4 decades. 4 decades gives us enough time to develop these products into things that can also use tire, rubber, glass, plastic, and so on. So this is not a fly-by-night venture that disappears next year. This is an industry that can last for decades. And that industry gives a boost to not only housing construction but also civil construction. So let's make it happen. Let's make a big noise. We want a load-based levy now so that the power stations do come to the party. Thank you very much. Not only housing construction but also civil construction.
Let's make it
I think you got the notion that Ingrid's pretty passionate about this, and yes, I do care, not as a member of the government, but as a member of the community, because we actually all pay for it. We pay for and our children will pay for the legacies that we leave. Look, we are a little bit behind time, but we are going to have the forum up here. So, Nick, Mark, Ingrid, could I ask each of you to come forward? We're going to have a few questions, and when I say a few, I mean it in that sense. Three questions. I'll be pretty tough on that. So if we can make the questions fairly succinct, I see a hand here, fairly succinct, and the questions, the answers similar. That would be greatly appreciated. So first question, and sorry if you could introduce yourself. So if we can make the questions fairly succinct, I see a hand here, fairly succinct, and the questions, the answers similar. That would be greatly appreciated. So first question, and sorry if you could introduce yourself. So if we can make the questions fairly succinct, I see a hand here, fairly succinct, and
As an economist, I go first before the technicians start to talk. It's a question of money. It's more expensive if you have to sort out the asbestos first. Sorry, that's our local issue. They have been caught out with putting asbestos into the dam to cover it. It's a question of money. Technically, yes, it's possible. It just costs more. And that's why we want now the government to bring in regulations to deal with what's going into the dams.
Thanks, Ingrid. Look, I would say yes to your question. One of the things that I have designed into our process is what they call an online XRF analyzer, which is X-ray fluorescence analyzer, and what that does is that it analyses the minerals that are coming in on the in-stream material, and what we then do is that we adjust the chemistry with the other additives that we put in to get the right outcome. So we have a process, if you like, that is I'll call it almost instantly flexible to variations that come into the process, but it depends on what it is. I mean, for example, if a rusty old rubbish can comes forward, well, that's got to be screened out, but I think asbestos, we could probably handle it from a chemical point of view.
So my answer is yes, and yes, it's expensive.
Okay. I think you got the answer there, Kim. The next question is the gentleman up the back who I bumped off his question earlier. So sorry about that.
Hi, thanks. My name's Andy Hartman. I've recently moved here with my family to Wanji. So I have an interest in this forum, and it's got up here as well. My question is about the low-base levy. How would that include legacy coal ash left in the site, obviously, which was when it was owned by the New South Wales government? And second question is there a market demand for the products we produce here?
Definitely yes to the market demand, and as I said, it's early. I'm still looking at how many tons per year. So far, it looks like if we process 1 million ton on each of the power stations we have, the market will easily absorb that. On how is the levy going to impact on the use of the legacy ash that's in the dam, we don't want anyone to pay the levy, and we don't expect them to pay the levy. Once the discussion in Parliament gets serious about the levy, we are very sure the power station will come to the party. We don't want the power stations just to deal with the ash they are producing now. They are not able to reuse 100%. Eraring is nowhere near the 80% they have promised by the end of the year. So in the first year they will have to pay the load-based levy because they will have to put ash in the dam. Unless, of course, they come to the party. And we start building, these factories can be ready if we start now, they can be ready in 3 years. They can go through the first 125,000 tons. So no reason to drag your feet any longer. Yes, the levy will only apply to what they put into the dam now, but our approach is this sheer threat of a levy will be enough to make them move.
Well, I think it's got to go to Mark there. He's a load-based levy sceptic. So, alternative.
I am a sceptic, and the reason I'm a sceptic is politics. However, Ingrid's probably right that this is not something that needs to be paid. But the fact is, we live in a political world, and as soon as it's put out there that what's wanted is for a levy to be placed on the power stations, they'll go on the news and they'll say this is a tax on every consumer. The electricity prices are going to go up. We can't afford it. You can't afford it. You're going to be paying it, and it's all for a bunch of greenies. The better solution, I really think, is to influence the buying market. And if you can influence the buying market by getting the government to, quite simply, change its procurement criteria. Just say, we want concrete made with fly ash. That's a criteria for the next bridge we build. That'll change it sufficiently. That's our view.
Okay, thank you. Nick, are you...
I just want to be sure.
Don't get the double dip, Ingrid. Come on.
Let me have a go, Ingrid. Look, I would advocate both. I reckon both together would be even more powerful than each one individually, but that's for the economists to talk about. I just want to talk about the question of the market. If you used and converted every tonne of coal ash that's generated every year in this state into aggregate and put it into concrete, the maximum impact that you would have on the amount of crushed rock that's used in New South Wales would be about 8%. So it's not massive. We're not trying to wipe out the people who own all the quarries or anything like that. They won't be happy because nobody wants to lose any fraction of their market. But the reality is, to be perfectly honest, they should be taking it up, and somebody's got to put the $140 million in to build a first plant. That's the thing. Build a first plant, and then the rest will flow.
Yeah, I'll just say there is that benefit on the other side of the ledger too. If we're producing aggregate, we're not digging it out of greenfield sites and clearing native bushland. Ingrid, did you want to? That's a win. I'm going to go to Laurie Manning. Hello, Laurie. Microphone's on its way. I'll just say there is that benefit on the other side of the ledger too. If we're producing aggregate, we're not digging it out of greenfield sites and clearing native bushland. Ingrid, did you want to? That's a win. I'm going to go to Laurie Manning. Hello, Laurie. Microphone's on its way.
And Nick mentioned high-rise buildings, and I know that there were several buildings, high-rise buildings in Sydney that struck problems with cracks in the walls and fires in the cladding, and also what I want to know is what is the melting point of the product that's without the glaze, and is it safe and heat resistant and fire retardant for high-rise buildings?
Okay, there's good technical questions for either Mark or Nick.
I'll try and answer that. You're right. Many of the tiles, certainly some of the ones you saw pictures of, are glazed, but they don't necessarily have to be. And the engineered sandstone that I referred to is a product that effectively is like a tile, except it's not glazed and it has some rougher bits in it, so it looks more like stone. Glazing doesn't affect the integrity in terms of the strength of a tile. It's simply an ink dye that's sintered at a very high temperature that sits across the top of the tile itself. So the strength of the tile depends on how it's made and what it's made of, and all of the tests we have had conducted in Europe and in the United States and in China showed that the integrity of the tiles that we made was equal to or better than any other porcelain tile on the market.
Very good question. None of us are very happy about the reports of things like the fires on the cladding, which is the aluminium resin composite claddings that have come into the country. But one of the things that you can do and is done is you can have the facades on buildings, rather than made out of that product, you can have them made out of precast concrete panels. There's a tendency not to do that because with regular concrete, you add so much weight to the structure. But if you did it with a lightweight aggregate concrete, you wouldn't have as much a problem. It'll certainly weigh more than an aluminium-based product, for example. The other thing with, and I know this would apply, your question in relation to temperature, I know that and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but in a sintering process, they normally operate between about 1,100 and 1,400 degrees centigrade. And that sintering means that you take it, if you like, just below the point of melting or just at the point of melting. And so if you're going to talk about it actually melting and falling off, you're going to be above 1,400, 1,500 degrees C, which is... Yeah, an aluminium melts at 700, for example. But the aluminium cladding is not structural. It's only a facade. It's a dressing, if you like, on the outside. But in these cases, even if you're using it structurally, is the point that I'm trying to make in a building, either of these products, you're talking about you're going to have to get the temperatures whereby the concrete itself will be spalling and melting or whatever, if you like, not melting, but breaking up under the heat, if you like, the same as what the aggregates would be. Because essentially, what is it? It's a reconstituted stone. I mean, stone is made up of, sorry, going technically, but silicates and aluminates, mostly silicates. What's ash made of? Mostly silicates and a bit of aluminates, and what we do in our process, we add a little bit more aluminates in to get the chemistry balance right to make the stone even stronger. So it's just a manufactured stone. So that's the sort of the comparison, if I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think you said no problem, it's all good.
I was just summing that up, no problem.
Yeah, Laurie, I think your point is well made, but a lot of it was about the actual engineering design in the first place, and the maybe corners that were taken in the actual construction and the construction materials. So my understanding is that this particular material would have at least equivalent integrity to other like building products, and I think that's what you're saying, Laurie. How does it compare if you're producing concrete or concrete panels? How does it compare to what's there now? And the maybe corners that were taken.
I think that's more or less right. Sintered products are more or less fireproof. I mean, they're solid at up to 1,400 degrees Celsius, so they're way more resistant to fire than most things you're going to find on or in a building. I'm not sure about the geopolymers.
Yes, I've got to just add one other thing, is that it's pretty well known if you use a porous type material, what they call a closed cell material, like a sintered product or a geopolymer compound, you will find that you have better insulation properties, and geopolymers particularly, that's my area, I know it's you get better thermal properties, thermal resistance properties than what you will with regular concrete. So I hope that answers it.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I did say 3, and I'm sticking to that if that's all right. So I'm sorry for those people that have questions for our panel, because it's a fascinating topic. But at this stage, I'm going to thank them, and if you could join me in thanking our panel for their contribution. I'm a hard ass, aren't I? I mean, I'm running 45 minutes over. I'm not too bad. Okay, we are going to go on. We have a number of speakers still with us, or still who are going to present to us. And the next panel is going to include, this is a public and community panel, I'm told. Certainly it is a community panel. And the first speaker is going to be Bruce Durkin. So Bruce is with the Coal Ash Community Alliance and another Wangi resident. Okay, wonderful place, Wangi. Bruce has made long-running contributions to grassroots environment causes across New South Wales, including the campaign against coal seam gas in Gloucester. And I think that was a win. Okay, he has been with the Coal Ash Community Alliance since the beginning and will speak to his involvement in the coal ash campaign today. Bruce, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Excuse my throat, I've had a bit of a cough the last few weeks. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. How lucky are we to have people in our community like Ingrid Schreiner on our community group, to be involved with the Hunter Community Environment Centre with people like Joe Lynch and Paul. It's just, we're just so blessed in this region that we have these people that come together. And I think that's the driving force as to why I joined the Coal Ash Community Alliance.
Can you hear me okay?
I guess leading on from my experience at Gloucester with the coal seam gas, we did have a win there. Lots of people, lots of different threads to why it didn't go ahead at Gloucester. But one of the big things that I took out of my time in that campaign was that,
and I think that's the driving force
what was
as to
that?
why I joined
was
the Community
that,
Alliance.
sorry, I've just had a brain freeze.
I guess leading on
The,
from my
the
experience
community
at Gloucester with
wasn't
the,
sure if
coal seam gas,
they were on
we
the
did have a
right
win
side
there. Lots
or
of
the wrong
people,
side.
Lots of different threads to why
They
it didn't
thought
go
it was
ahead
roughly
at
50-50
Gloucester.
wanted the
But
gas
one of the big
and
things
50
that I
didn't
took out
want the
of
gas.
my time in that campaign,
So they fixed that
that
problem by knocking on the door of every resident in Gloucester and surrounding localities, and they came up with a figure of 87% of people were against the coal seam gas going ahead. Now that's a great figure in itself, but the main thing out of that figure is that the people that thought they may have been in the minority or that it was 50-50 and they didn't want to speak up because they didn't want to ruffle feathers were so empowered because they suddenly realised they were virtually the whole community. And that's the power of community groups, is by advocating to the community and getting people to participate. And I always say that everybody can participate, no matter how big or small. Participation might be just talking to the people in your street about an issue, or it might be sitting down in the office of AGL, which we did on level 21 in Miller Street, Sydney, talking to the chairman of the board. Or it might be sitting in Greg Piper's office at Toronto. Greg's door's always open and he's been wonderful receiving us. So my message today is about, I'm keeping it short because we are running out of time. My message today is about participation. Our group was formed, only 2 years ago, March 2019, and it came about because of all a few things came together. The Australian Environmental Justice Australia put out their report, HCEC with their Out of the Ashes Part 1, and the Ashdown Wall, which raised the whole story about coal ash significantly in our community. The closing of the Monument Bay Rec Centre is another story for another day. We won't go there today. But our group came together and we just got lots of things done. We wrote letters to parliamentarians. We wrote letters to the papers. We spoke on radio. We had community meetings. We had stalls at the local YE stalls and at Spears Point. We had barbecues, sausage sizzles at Bunnings to raise funds and, more importantly, to advocate for our cause. So, from little things, big things grow, and from all these threads, the people that we saw today, the expertise on that panel is phenomenal. there is industry out there. Why can't we do it? Ingrid's right to say, and obviously today, the main reason for today is for us to come together to keep that momentum going. I'll let Joe and the others deal with that later, but it's up to us, it's up to you and me. You know, I don't have a slideshow. We just have each other, and we as a team can make this move forward, and I just really hope people step up and take action. Thank you. Today is for us to come together to keep that momentum going. I'll let Joe and the others deal with that later.
Thanks, Bruce. You'll be back up in a little while anyway. We're still going to have a little panel up here if there's any questions. The next speaker, however, Bruce, I've only known you for a couple of years. The next speaker, I have to say, I've known for many, many years. Janet, I'm talking about you.
Take action.
Right. Okay. So I've known Janet as a local activist, resident of the area for many, many years. Well, I don't know. Nearly 30 years, I suppose, and has enormous respect amongst those people who know of her work around the area, fighting for the local environment, for the local ecology. So, Janet, it's a great privilege for me to actually be able to welcome you up here today to say a few words about your thoughts on this matter. Janet White, thank you very much. Has enormous
Thank you,
respect
Greg.
amongst
Thank you,
those
Greg.
people
Can you
who
hear
know
me?
of her work around the area, fighting for the local environment, for the local ecology. So, Janet, it's a privilege for me to actually be able to welcome
Hello,
you up
Terry.
here today to say a few words
Good,
about
you can hear me, and
your
that's important.
thoughts on this matter. Janet White, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Greg, for all that. And I am the community representative for Lake Macquarie, which includes you and 3/4 of that lot out there. We have a lot to say, but it's all been said. So thank you for your time. Hello, Terry. No, not quite. Yes, thank you, Greg, for all that. And I am. Shall I take it off? I might be better holding it. For Lake Macquarie, which includes you. You see, ask a granddaughter. Am I right now? Can you? Okay, here we are on this beautiful lake of ours. A splendid sheet of water, as referred to by our friend and author, Scott Bevan, in his beautiful book, The Lake. If you haven't read it, get it. Below us, we're standing on a honeycomb of you know what. Okay, here we are on this. And around us we have two pesky, ageing coal-fired power plants. Sheet of water. Now, I don't intend to beleaguer the obvious, and that's already been covered. I had all those solutions these others talked about. I knew they were there. But our lake, teeming with two things that I think are important to our group. The lake teeming with biota, numerous bays supporting endangered flora and fauna. And that's already been covered. Must remember this is a catchment estuary with a very narrow exit entrance of Swansea Channel. So there is a modicum of flushing. The tides that we do get are very minimal and primarily atmospheric driven. Bear all that in mind when we're looking at what's running into our lake. The second thing is Pandora. You know the story of Pandora and her box. She unwittingly opened and released, true, and she released all these unexpected evils. Well, I reckon this was there. Now, this is Cole, Mr. Speaker. Don't be afraid, don't be scared. No? Okay. And as we've heard, when coal is pulverised and burnt, we end up with the ash. The three phases of ash that we in the common public know about, being fly, bottom ash, and slag.
Okay, so as this brief being for the community of Lake Macquarie, I sent out requests to the community for their comments and was nigh swamped with responses. I will summarise those as best I can, but prior to that, just a word of caution, and it's the use of hyperbole. Okay, so as this in media releases, for the community of Lake Macquarie, brochures, I sent out requests. Hyperbole gets us nowhere. Generally speaking, in the community, you end up with fear and anger, through to absolute dismissal and apathy, considering it as pure, and I quote one response, campaign fabrications by rabble-rousers. It's an important issue this month, and it's incumbent on us not to activate or provoke these attitudes. There. Considering it as pure, and I quote, their end of the lesson. Back to the local community. First, of course, was the airborne pollutants. Airborne particulates, from folk with compromised health issues, respiratory, and dependent on wind direction. The white pale ash we all wipe off our tables and outdoor furniture. Now we know what this is. However, in turn, that raised high concerns among the community of the not insignificant radiation levels augmented in that ash of thorium and uranium. The second contentious issue, which Bruce alluded to, was the closure of Iona Bay Sport and Rec facility in March 2019, when the outfit began. This was done by a state government in caretaker mode, a couple of days before election. Interesting stuff. Now, because of, and I quote, imminent danger of Ashwall Dam collapse. 2 weeks ago, an Origin Energy rep, and I quote, because I was there on this committee, the dam wall remediation project is progressing well through its design phase. Now, you wouldn't want to hurry now, would you? No, don't let's hurry. And just briefly, the first 2 weeks ago, the 30 million relocation of the site to Eraring has provoked all sorts of concerns, both environmental and the painted contravention of the E4 lifestyle zoning. There, I've covered that, Terry. Local fishermen, can they bring their... Good heavens, let's hurry. I should have done a PowerPoint, see? Local fishermen concerned about, can they bring their catch home? Now on to this one, don't I? The 30 million. Isn't this fun? We're enjoying it? Yeah. Local fishermen bringing their catch home for the children and poisoning them like crazy. Well, that may be okay to get rid of a mother-in-law, but local fishermen, it's not for us. I referred them to the government, New South Wales Government Health Guidelines. But interesting, as you've heard from more than one of the previous speakers, the interruption to fish reproduction by a lot of these metals is high, so there won't be any fish anyway. However, that should bother our local government, Lake Macquarie City Council, whose tourist dollar project, Let's Fish Lake Macquarie, commenced only last year. They may have to close that down. And guess what I did for the ensuing week? Clean up all the debris along the shore. Who do you believe? Don't know. Who do you believe? The growing national mistrust and distrust, two different words, in government continues to grow. The same with commerce. But what strange bedfellows, governments and commerce, and both are always fairly economical with the truth. Clean up all the debris along the shore. Who do you believe? This last community comment is purely self-indulgent, and I'll just brief on it. I've got a whole paragraph here, Greg. However, it's about obfuscation. 3 words. I have read so many papers over the last couple of months and documents. 3 words prance like Bolshoi ballerinas across the stage. Proposed, anticipated, expected. This last community comment purely self-indulgent. However, and I invite you to read the New South Wales Electricity Infrastructure Roadmap and Origin's Eraring Long-Term Ash Management Infrastructure Strategy. As Hamlet said, words, words, words. There are solutions, and they've already been presented to you. So I'll leave it there, Greg. No. But I have some solution here now, listening to all these figures. 140 million to start up this plant. Well, if Origin gave their 60 million for the, was it 60 million? No, 30 million, was it? 30 million for the Eraring replacement site. That means there's only 110 million to be got from other sources. Then you could open Myuna Bay again, and you could start one of these wonderful lightweight aggregate product plants in Eraring. No, I know where. In the mine void of Fassifern. Open cut. There, I've solved it. However, history has proved the longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. We're all shared custodians of this place, but take heart. Because remember Pandora? The very last thing in her box? Hope.
Okay, Janet did put a plug for Scott Bevan's book, The Lake, A Splendid Sheet of Water, and of course she does get a sort of a little bit of a mention in there, a little bit of a cheeky mention, as Janet's wont to do. So thank you very much for that, Janet, and thank you once again for your many, many years of passionate fighting for your local environment and for your community. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us a guest all the way from Lithgow. Okay, so this is Dr. Jane Aiken, soil scientist, very, very patient of you to stay with us, so thank you for coming here in the first instance. Jane has travelled from Lithgow to join us, and as I say, a resident and social scientist, soil scientist of Lithgow, motivated by coal ash reuse and remediation. Ladies and gentlemen, she's got something there, something in the box, and she brings a multifaceted, which must be in the box, a multifaceted and unique perspective on the coal ash issue. So Jane, thank you for being here, and I'll hand over to you. So thank you for coming here in the first. Pandora's box. Well, it's a multifaceted Pandora's box.
as I say, a resident and social scientist, soil scientist.
Looks like a sump to me, but anyway, would you like this mounted or would handheld?
She's got something there, something in the box, and she brings a multifaceted, which must be in the box, a multifaceted and unique perspective on the coal ash issue. So, Jane, thank you for being here, and I'll hand over to you.
We've got some slides.
Pandora's box. Well,
So
it's a
I was
multifaceted
trying to
Pandora's box.
think how I would present this talk. So, first of all, welcome to everybody to the knowledge sector of coal ash. I'll make a statement. This is what I was thinking when I was writing my bio. This is the last part. So I'll make the statement and then we'll have the discussion. So unless there are collaborations to enable renewable assets and that coal ash is reclaimed with value economics, the term I just coined, is the manufacture of cementitious products will not occur, and we will be considered the resulting in the cost of site management. That is an ongoing burden on the Australian population. The concept that's put forward today is the load-based levy. We're looking for levers from a political point of view to create an industry. So I didn't get a chance to ask the question. So I'll answer the question, what are my three top priorities? First of all, I just wanted to let you know that in coal ash, there are rare earth minerals. The Mount Piper Power Station has investigated in this, and so don't forget that there are potential future benefits that we don't know about. Secondly, that there are power stations in the US, one particular one, that has achieved a net negative from their their power station. I think it's Duke. I should have checked it. You can go on to the website. What they have done is that they made a commitment. So don't forget that why we are here today is because there hasn't been a commitment on any front except at the Coal Ash Community Alliance. The questions that we're talking about are the questions that need to be all considered with respect to research and development. The way that the power station in the US achieved a net negative on their repository was that they, one, made the commitment. It's very easy. We're going to do it. No policies, no corporate strategy goals. We are going to do it. The community decided that they would, however they did it, they were going to invest, so that there was a whole focus. The focus took more than 7 or 8 years to actually achieve that, to get the research and development. So all of the questions that everyone has asked, all of the thoughts that you have, they are all part of a research and development program. Anyone's idea, everyone's got the best idea, and here's some more products here. So from Lithgow, I really appreciate the opportunity to come over the other side of the hill, because we've been busy over there. So we've been busy. I was invited that there's a term called skin in the game, and I now can say I've got skin in the game. I started with coal ash in 2006 when I went to work at the Mount Piper Power Station and Wallerawang Power Station to manage the ash repositories there. When I arrived, the comment was, oh, we put the ash out, we had a big rainstorm, and the pumps and everything went down the bottom of the hill. So after that, I said, not on my watch. I said that a few times, but anyway. So in 2006, I started. I've done a master's thesis on coal ash for agriculture. I've been to Nashville, which was really good. As they say, what stays in the conference, stays in the conference, whatever it is. Then in 2019, I left, decided that I could do more work outside of the corporate structures, because I wouldn't be able to stand here today if I was employed by a company who had a contract with the Mount Piper, with one of the power stations. So on our side of the hill, as it's been noted, if we might be able to make the next slide. So they said we couldn't do it. So since 2007, there has been a group called Classique Environment Solutions. Their work is the work that one of the products is sitting on here. That is a GRC pit. It contains, that GRC pit is glass fibre pit. It's a reinforcement type of material. So that has 55% fly ash in it. There were tilt panels and also aggregates as well, and the aggregates used 100%. So we've heard of fly ash. The work that Classique Environment Solutions did on our side of the hill was only focused on reclaimed ash. So there are aggregates, sand replacements, and the list will go on. Actually, you can make doors, paper, cardboard, and remember the rare earths. Remember Silicon Valley. Okay, so there's technical testing, and if we could go to the next slide, please. So the statement is that we're ready for reclamation. So what you see on the left-hand side is the Wallerawang and Mount Piper. So when the Mount Piper Power Station was built in 1995, they couldn't put ash in the wet or lean phase or the wet ash dam because they had problems with groundwater. So they decided to use a dry ash placement system. So here you have a beautiful, neat, in the top left-hand corner, I say it's a beautiful, neat structure that's built to withstand large rainfalls and dust. But anyway, so we also have the Sawyers Swamp Creek Ash Dam, which is the photograph on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, when you just look, and I was asking, well, what it is that we deal with, we can say that because we're an environmentalist or greenies or tech heads or whatever. So it's really an absolute disgrace on a lot of fronts. If we might be able to get the next paragraph. So in the work that I've done over the last however many years, and in preparing this talk today, I thought that you may ask the question as to why this hasn't happened. Why haven't we been able to go forward? Why are we here in 2021 when coal ash has been here ever since Australia started the first power station at Balmain in Sydney, and they've been trying to deal with the issue of coal ash. The solution that they had for the Balmain power station was that my father told me, he said they used to put the ash on a barge and take it into the Sydney Harbour and dump it. So we haven't really gone very much further in time. So there are gatekeepers. There are the gatekeepers which are called the waste gatekeepers, people who would make decisions about what we can do and how we can use our waste if ash is actually in the waste space. Considerations. So from waste, I would say that the interests are waste and resource recovery. So in New South Wales, we have a framework for doing that. We've got the opportunity to use coal ash, but we haven't got the, it just hasn't happened. So for the environment, the interests are water pollution and waterways, and your side, the Lake Macquarie, is the example for this. In finance, if we were dealing with asbestos or PFAS, there would be an unlimited amount of money to deal with this. However, in the finance, because there's zero tolerance associated with the asbestos and the PFAS, there's not zero tolerance with respect to the coal ash. So we've also got the issue that there is the concept of legal liability associated with if we do this, then there will be ramifications. So there's also political gatekeepers where we have the interests are essentially policy with respect and physical properties of nature. Then the other gatekeepers are the community. Like, we need to save ourselves from ourselves. And knowledge, who's in charge? We all have the answers, but we're not going anywhere. If you may, excuse me for saying that. If we might be able to have the next slide, please. So really, this is my last slide. So really, we've got a situation on four fronts. And if we take a box and we say, well, we know where we need to go. So on the one hand, we've got an issue that's a legacy. We've got a past, present, and a future legacy in any framework that we think of it. We know what those are. Ingrid has identified that there is value economics, and she's identified that the economical way forward is to create an industry that will fund itself, essentially. My take on value economics is that if we do this, we need to make sure that we have addressed community, environment, and the future with benefits. So we need those three factors, and if we had an economic system that addressed those three factors, then it's better than coining the term sustainability. The third is, as I mentioned, that we have a well-studied problem. Every single power station in the whole world has the same problem. Isn't it interesting that we're all sitting here wondering what to do with ash? How are we going to do this? And we as a community have got to prove this. Industry has not been able to create the relationship between the government, the power stations, the cement industry, the finance companies, the community, because as you've rightly pointed out, there are questions that you have that cannot be answered straight away. So we're all very well versed in the problem. We're all very well versed in the technical data, but we haven't been able to create a momentum. We haven't been able to speak the language which will get us through the next stage. So Ingrid's levy, the road-based levy, is really, it may not, it is the way that we can have the discussion. And then as an industry, as a community, we've demonstrated that we have the numbers behind the potential. We've got a lot of different people who are thinking about the same solution. On the other side of the hill, we also came up to the conclusion that it was aggregates. We couldn't use coal ash for agriculture because you can't utilise that, right? You have to be able to create a situation where you can access the power station. You need to be able to access water, you need to be able to access transport, you need to be able to access finance, and it's not one company that will ever succeed. So from a community's perspective, the community needs to be able to focus under the radar. Well, you may question me on that. I'm not going to tell us what to do, but there's under the radar because the cement companies utilise 20% of the ash. Now, there are questions, why don't they do more? Well, there is not enough ash. You would believe it or not, but there is not enough ash for the cement industry to utilise the production ash from the power station. The cement industry has created barriers for itself that say that we can't use anything else than fine grade coal ash or fly ash in cement. There is technical information that has now been created that that is not the case. So we've been under a furphy, and it was the lady before me who said, who do we believe? Or someone has said, who do we believe? So if from our perspective, we have a situation that at the Mount Piper Power Station, for example, we used to burn and get 50,000 tonnes, so 50,000 tonnes of ash per month. But the power station actually produced 65,000 tonnes, and the cement industry used the 15. So the 50,000 tonnes was in the repository. So what I would like you to understand is that the repository can be a waste, it can be a resource, it can be a new industry, and it also has some benefits that we don't even, and we haven't even thought about. So the ability, some of the technical abilities, some of the ability to dredge, some of those issues, we have to be careful that we don't speak that one statement is a statement that covers everything. You may have a situation where you're talking contamination, and as soon as you start that, you're down on a path, but you need to be very specific and very detailed. So I'd just like to thank the organisers for the opportunity for me to nominate revaluing our waste, to revitalise our communities, to remediate what needs to be remediated, and to regenerate our economies. And I thank the opportunity, and I'm going to... any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Now, I understand that we have a video to run, so we are going to... Jane, you might want to take a seat for a second over there, because we're going to, we've got this video messages to run, and as soon as they've run, I'm going to bring the last three speakers up on the panel. So thank you very much for that. If we could run those.
Our economies. And I thank the opportunity, and I'm going to... any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Now, I understand
what we have as a video to run. So we are going to, Jane, you might want to take a seat for a second over there because we're going to, we've got this video messages to run, and as soon as they've run, I'm going to bring the last three speakers up on the panel. So thank you very much for that. We'll run those. Well, thank you. Just going to invite our last three speakers up, and we'll take some. Janet, would you like to come up we'll just see if there's any questions from the floor. Jane, I assume that you knew that lady, did you? Yeah, I picked that up. So.
I was fortunate that Julie introduced me to the Hunter Community Environment Centre.
Okay. Are there any questions? Well, there are a number of questions. Well, turn that down. Thank you. Is that what you want? Okay. Just going to invite our last three speakers up. And the lady closest to me. How do you do that? You? Yeah. That's right. Questions from the floor. Wearing glasses. Yes, that's you. Sitting next to Kim. How's that? I picked that up. So,
I was fortunate that Julie introduced me to the Hunter Community Environment Centre.
are there any questions? Well, there are a number of questions. Thank you. Just going to invite our last three speakers up, and the lady closest to me. How do you do that? You? Yeah. That's right. Wearing glasses. Yes, that's you. Sitting next to Kim. How's that? I picked that up.
I was fortunate that Julie introduced me to the Hunter Community. Yes, I can. At the present time, I'll include Australia in those other countries because Australia is importing coal ash for cement. It comes in bulk bags from India and China, and it's unloaded in Melbourne. And also, since it's also unloaded in South Australia. The other countries, for example, China, have created a situation where a few years ago they, like in China, in the provinces of China, they created what's called industrial parks. So there were like, for example, 200 people who could do things with fly ash and coal ash. They made doors, they made pits, they made aggregates, and it was all consolidated in a industrial park. I can't really recall the amount of hectares that park was, but I do know that the Chinese government was very happy with that. And what they demonstrated was that it was a situation where they basically provided the site and people came. It was built and the people came. So, for example, an industrial park was developed, I think it was 750 hectares or something. It was massive, absolutely massive. In India, they were focused a lot from the agricultural point of view. In the US, they've just been digging them up. In 2015, when we were in Nashville, they were speaking that the policy was that they had a situation where we had, for example. So there was a whole industry created by digging up the ash dams and then putting it somewhere else in lined containers. So that was really good because a lot of people earned a lot of money from that, and the coal-fired power stations got benefits from the government because they had reduced the economic, the environmental impacts. In Great Britain and England, they have now got, so they're totally nuclear now, but they do have ash repositories, and the ash repositories in England, they're now being started to be reclaimed. And they're reclaimed for cementitious products to support the cement industry across Europe. So there's a variety of other activities out there. So thank you very much for the question. I hope I've answered that.
Well, thank you, Jane. It's probably everyone happy with that, or do you want to say something, Bruce?
Not really, not on the technical side, just volumes. Japan is at 97%, and Germany, who probably doesn't have much coal ash fired power stations left, doesn't have any repositories, if I'm correct. So, other countries have done it. We're not reinventing the wheel, is what I think some of us are getting at.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to go, and by the way, there's only 2 more to go. Okay, so sorry about that. These are very valuable questions. Lady Turi. Thank you.
Everyone happy with that, or do you want to say something, Bruce?
Not really, not on the technical side, just volumes. Japan is at 97%, and Germany, who probably doesn't have much coal ash power stations left, doesn't have any repositories, if I'm correct. So other countries have done it. Is what some of us are getting at.
Okay, thanks, guys. By the way, there's only 2 more to go. Okay, so sorry about that. These are very valuable questions.
Absolutely thrilled with all of these ideas. I think this is very positive, but we will need to do something about stopping the leachate in Lake Macquarie. I haven't heard our council mention, but we have some of us on Lake Macquarie, Central Coast Council, so it's just Lake Macquarie Council, it's also Central Coast Council, and we have the legacy of the ash dam in our backyard. So I want to know whether we're going to look at the governmental level, Greg, of doing similar things that were done in the Newcastle Harbour, which was the underwater concrete. We could use the fly ash and make the concrete to actually put a wall down or something to stop that leachate into Lake Macquarie. Because I don't know what else you're going to do over the next century that's going to poison my children and future generations and all life.
Thanks, sir. Sorry I didn't recognise you up the back. I actually can't quite see that far, except in broad terms. Was that can I take that as a comment? Okay. So
it's quite a technical. It is a very technical question that you're posing there, and it's certainly one that I think people are talking about this legacy issue. Can I just say, I've been saying all along that this is the lazy option we've been using. Yeah, it might be fine in the short term, but whether it's 100 years, 500 years, 1,000 years time, this is going to come back and bite future generations, and that can't be allowed to happen. So, Bruce?
Can I take that as a comment?
Yeah, I don't really have anything technical to add once again, but Joe will have something to say. I think...
Okay. Sorry, Bruce. Sorry to barge in on the panel. So I just wanted to say I think that's a really good point, and there is contamination that's going to occur before an industry does get up and running. And you know, it's a good thing for workers that the industry has many decades in it. But again, you know, we're here primarily because the pollution issue. I think you and I can say that's for us at least. And I think that means that we really need to keep our eye on the regulator. So the New South Wales EPA haven't really got much of a mention today, but they are the pollution regulator in New South Wales, and they have agreed to expand their investigations into the pollution occurring from coal ash waste dumps in Lake Macquarie. But you know, they have a difficult job in regulating a power station that is partially privatised. You know, it's a public-private thing in a lot of ways. The liability for the pollution is half the governments and half the power station operators. It's tricky for them. But, you know, the role of the community and the role of people with concerns who live in the area whose children and ecosystems are at risk is to keep on to the regulator and make sure that their focus is on coal ash waste, leachate and pollution there. So, you know, community groups, Mannering Park Progress Association, seeking meetings with the EPA and keeping, you know, local members informed about that and continuing to ask questions and get new evidence about, you know, what programs they're running and how they're stopping leachate and how ash dam management, you know, is unfurling, because that plays a big role in the degree of leachate. Like, that's something that everyone here in the room who shares Sue's concerns or any concerns about this, I think there is a big scope for people to continue to be involved and keep the regulators, government and operators, hold them to account in the interim before we can get all that ash out of the ground. Yeah.
Hey, Sue, can I just say on that one, the problem around here is there's very few members that actually are really aware of the situation. I mean, myself, I'm sure Yasmin Catley does, I'm sure David Harris does, but the further you get away from the actual repository of this ash, of it, what is it? I don't know. Many people in Lake Macquarie, when they drive along past Myuna Bay, the wall's there, but they don't see it anymore. People don't see the ash dam that's hidden away down here. So it really is an issue. We've got to keep it right in people's front of mind. And that particularly goes for politicians, whether local government, state government, not so much the feds, but it is really important that we do that, because I just think too many people don't know about it and don't even give a thought to it. That's why it's so pleasing that there's so many people here.
Many people in Lake Macquarie, when they drive along past Myuna Bay, the wall's there, but they don't see it anymore. People don't see the ash dam that's hidden away down here. So it really is an issue. We've got to keep it right in people's front of mind.
So, Simon and Rowan, total crap. They should have factored in that liability. The state let that slide, and it's a bloody disgrace. Okay, so yep. Okay, I have one last question, and I think it's from my mate up there from the coal ash community, Louis. Oh, it is Louis. How are you, mate? It's got to be a short one. I know you.
Simon Rowe, total crap. They should have factored in that liability. The state let that slide, and it's a bloody disgrace. Okay, I have one last question, and I think it's from my mate of the coal ash community, Louis. Oh, it is Louis. How are you, mate?
The Warren Power Station has a filtration system up there.
It's got to be a short one. I know you.
Removes all the impurities, brings that water so crisp and so pure that you can float on top of it. And that water is used to turn the turbines into steam. And so the government originally built this for them and created this system so that they can create a water filtration system that produces energy and profits electricity. Then why can't the government use the liability for this toxicity that's running away 1 tonne per week? Why can't they build another filtration system up there that can take use all the water, the leachate that's leaching into the lake? So I'm not sure about Al's point. I don't know one of those facilities, but it's used to storage. So I think there's a shortest solution. The longer we wait, there's not, every year there's going to be another 50 tonnes of electricity chemicals in this lake. And if we act quickly and get the government to invest, surely that should be one of the ways. Whilst we get this coal ash free sorted in the short term, and just punch it out of the way when we do the filtration system. No, for the right side. It's like you're talking about putting a filtration system over at Belmont to take seawater to clean it up. Why not clean up the lake? Why not take the water out of the lake and clean that up? So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay, look, we are getting to the end. I think that everybody's been quite reasonable in saying that this is a long legacy issue. And out here at Munmora point goes back into the early 60s. Araring Power Station, I think they started burning coal around about 78, 79. I'm not doing any more questions, but I'll just answer that question. Louis, that particular system, I don't believe that it's able to be converted to that. I've had discussions about the chemical nature of what's coming out of there in the leachate. It's a completely different situation to what's being processed by Hunter Water, which is in a primary, secondary, and then a tertiary treated up there at the power station by going through a MEMTEC system, a high filter system, and then a reverse osmosis system. I don't believe it would work for that particular purpose, but that doesn't mean that it can't be treated. Of course it can be treated, and it should be. And it goes back to Sue's question about allowing this material to leach out. I'm not sure if anyone wants to give more, if there's any further technical detail on that, but we have had those discussions about how that can be done. But there are ways of treating it. Wouldn't be with the same method, Louis, but it certainly is treatable. Bruce?
Yeah, once again, nothing technical to add, but as a community group, in our group, the College Community Alliance, we've got Gary Blaschke down the back, who is very passionate with his own life story about the health concerns. So if you would like to talk about those things that Louis kind of founded in his question, Gary is the person to talk to, or get in touch with the group and correspond with Gary Blaschke.
Well, so Jane?
I'll just quickly make a comment. We're quite lucky with the dry ash repository, because if you basically keep your powder dry, then you're okay. Where you've got accession to groundwater, then as soon as you've got water with ash, then that's a more difficult problem. And I do identify that that although we have one small ash dam, you've got a very much larger problem than we have on the other side of the hill. For example, the Sawyers Swamp Creek Ash Dam is designed to leak, and so we can understand the type of leachates that would be emitting from the base of the dam. So that's reasonably, but when it's mixed into the lake, that's another aspect. But when we're talking about the problems that we might have with it, with the dry ash system. It's all about managing the landform and the landscape so that we can manage the surface water on there. And there's ideas of capping. So I do appreciate that it's not. So I come back to my point that there is no one answer that's going to solve all the problems. So we have to think about that. We've got a multiple problem issue, find the principle that will drive it, and be aware that the answers are going to be site-specific.
Well, thank you for that, Jane. Janet, nothing? Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to now proceed to sort of wrap things up, but I do want to just remind everybody that there is the declaration down there that's to be signed. If you haven't signed it and you'd like to sign it, would you please go down and sign it in an orderly manner? Yes, we've got our model down there pointing to it, and then make your way out. But before we do that, before we go, can I just want to run through and acknowledge everybody. So we had our speakers, Ian, Nick, Mark, Ingrid, we had, of course, Bruce and Jane and Janet, and we had Julie, was it, that came in from outside. I want to acknowledge you all. Thank you for coming here. Some of you have come a long way, I know, and I'm sure it's greatly appreciated. Can I ask everybody, however, to acknowledge the Hunter Community Environment Centre, Joe and Paul, and all the volunteers that did all the work around. I'm sure this is no mean feat to pull something like this together. What I will say, what I took from this is we've been bloody lazy as a society for many years. We've built an economy very well on the basis of cheap and lazy process of producing electricity. Now that might be fine for the miners, it might be fine for the people who got made jobs. By the way, I declare my son actually works at a Rowing Power Station. That's great. It's not about individuals, it's about society. Okay, and we need to change the way we do things. We've all benefited from it in some way. So we're all in this together, and I'm at least taking some heart from the fact that we're seeming to get some response from the government at this stage. And I think, Joe, you would acknowledge that Matt Keane in particular seems to be addressing this. That doesn't mean that it's solved, but we're in a much better place than we were 18 months ago or 2 years ago. So that's a great thing, but it's because of the hard work of local communities. As I said to Sue, you go around, so many people wouldn't even know that this was an issue. They wouldn't know it was an issue, and yet it's one of the biggest legacy issues we're leaving for our children. And that's something that, if we've got any principle, if we've got any morality, we cannot allow that to happen. I know that the people working in the community in this particular issue, that every one of you who came along here, you wouldn't have come along if you didn't care. So I want to thank you all for that. And Joe, with that, I'm going to almost officially sign out. Thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Joe.
I just wanted to, thank you. I just wanted to encourage us all to put our hands together and give a big thank you to our MC for today and Mr. Greg Piper, the member for Lake Macquarie. Thank you, everyone. It's a Saturday. Greg's taken the Saturday off. We've all taken our Saturday off to do this. Thank you to each and every one of you. The declaration is an important piece of documentation that we need to keep campaigning on this issue and convincing the ministers and convincing the people who need to be convinced that you all care about this. So please do sign it, and we'll be in touch with you. There's a campaign planning session coming up later in the month with the Sustainable Neighbourhood Alliance networks. So if anyone wants to attend, we'll send you the details. Don't worry about cleaning up the chairs. You may stay and linger for a bit, but we'll be packing up around you. And thank you very much again to all the volunteers and to each and every one of you. That's it for the day. Thanks.